Thanks for joining our session tonight. My name is Lisa Hoffart. I'm a mental performance consultant and a registered psychologist. I work with the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan. You can see we're going to talk about goal setting tonight. And if you were on our call last week, you know that Anna joined us as well to share some of her perspective and her experience. And we're lucky to have her back again tonight. So Anna, I'll let you do an introduction of yourself and then we'll jump into it.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be on this call. So my name is Anna Young. I'm a former Symetric Tour player, which is now called the Epson Tour, which is the developmental tour for the LPGA. So very excited to share my experience, which has been very fun. I went to the University of Florida and I got a degree in psychology, where I then turned professional after, and now I am coaching, which has been a very fun journey, being on the other side of golf. So very excited to learn whatever Lisa has going on today, and very excited to add to whatever she's got.
Awesome.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I just stopped sharing my screen for a minute there. I wanted to make you bigger just so we can see you better.
Oh, thanks.
But I will pop that back up. I know sometimes it doesn't always spotlight the speaker. You can change that in your views. Anyways, in terms of tonight, we're talking about goal setting. I really want to take us through what that looks like. I know it can be a really foundational skill, and I think that's why it's important to talk about, to be able to look at how we actually apply it for ourselves. If you're a coach and you're working with others, thinking about how you're helping them to really implement it effectively, going through some different goal setting principles, and then also being able to take this time to set goals just to get you actually in that process while you're thinking about this. So to start off, I really like this graphic. I use it in a few of my different presentations, but I think it really depicts a lot of kind of plans versus reality. And especially when we're talking about goals, I think it's helpful to highlight that we sometimes think we've got our starting point, our plan A, we've got this end point, and it's going to be pretty straightforward in terms of how we get there. Sometimes it is. Sometimes our plan unfolds great and everything seems smooth and expected. I think often though, and I would argue most of the time, the reality is going to look more like the picture on the bottom, where we've got all sorts of ups and downs, things that come up that throw us off, those unexpected, those challenges, and we need to be constantly adapting. And we need to look at how am I working towards my goal now that this has come up? How do I need to adjust now? And so sometimes it's adjusting your goal. Sometimes it's just adjusting the plan or the process. And so if we can be aware that this happens, and in some cases almost expect it, doesn't make those challenges less like go away more quickly or make them easier. But it just helps us be able to navigate them sometimes more effectively because we feel like we've got the coping tools in place to be able to deal with them more quickly. So again, I think goal setting has so many different benefits. There are lots of different ways that it can influence our performance. And I think number one, just to really emphasize that when we set goals, it does actually have a really positive influence on our performance. And so these are 4 different ways that it can help us by being able to help basically our mind and our body work together in terms of thinking about what do I actually want to accomplish and how am I going to do that? And so when we set those goals, it helps us to be able to just direct our attention and our action onto something that we're wanting to accomplish. And so we're able to start thinking about it more clearly. We're able to really detail that out for ourselves. We're able to probably explain it to other people around us. We're starting to focus on that more. But when we know what we want to do, we can also start to support that with the steps of how am I going to do that? And those hows, again, really add that clarity, but those can then lead us into action. And so those actions we want to make sure are helping us take positive steps forward, helping with our growth so that we can feel like we are then making that progress towards the goal. When we start doing that, when we start directing our attention and directing our action, then we start to look at the effort that's required. And that can be something that's important to think about as you're setting the goals. What kind of effort is required for this? What are maybe sacrifices that I'll have to make? Am I willing to do that? How am I going to prioritize things? But if we can really feel like we're shifting that effort in a positive way, again, that gets directed into the goals, into the process, and can help to have a positive effect on our performance.
We are going out and
it's not just about having that initial effort, but it's about having that applied effort over a period of time. And so sometimes people set goals and they get really excited and they have this big push for a month or a week or kind of a shorter period of time, and then things dip off. they kind of realize that this is maybe going to be
positive
some
progress
work.
moving forward.
They feel like it's
and
they're
I
not
think
seeing
that's
as
a
much
great
progress
couple
as they'd
words,
like
and
to.
probably a
Whatever
great way to
reason,
start framing
sometimes
it as a
that
positive
effort can drop
progress.
off. And so,
Something like that could
especially
be
when
a
you've got
nice
that
little check-in,
that goal
but
of what you want
having
to
the sense
achieve, but
that
also
I
how you're
am
going to do
moving
that,
forward,
and the daily
that
and
I'm
weekly
getting
goals
better,
that
that
go
I'm
along
making
with
that
it.
progress.
That
And
can really
maybe
make
some days
a
it
big
feels like
difference
that
in terms of
progress is
prolonging that
flying,
effort
and you're
and
really
making sure that
taking
you're
big
putting
steps,
in
and maybe
that
sometimes it
consistent
feels like it's a bit
day-to-day
slower, but
work
being
that's
able to
helping you make
acknowledge
that
how you're
improvement.
growing and how you're getting better.
When we look
That
at
can be a
goals,
big part of
we
success
often
as
look
well.
at essentially what we want to do, how we're going to get
again,
there.
I think it's really helpful for us to
And
start
using what works,
developing
using
this
those
idea of
strengths
what
that we talked
success
about
is for
last week, if
us,
you were on that
but
session,
also to
can make a
recognize
big
that we don't
difference
have
to
to
help
have
us
one
move forward. And we'll
definition
talk
of
a bit about
success.
that tonight.
We could even combine a
One
lot
of the
these
other
different
benefits of
pieces
goal setting, though, is
into
that we get to start learning
kind of a
about
more
new
well-rounded or
strategies,
more
new
holistic
techniques,
perspective
new
of success.
resources.
So
And so
yes, we
as
probably
we
want to
get
achieve
better,
our goals, we
learn new
want those
things.
specific
And then that
outcomes.
opens our
But
eyes
what
to other
else
things that
means
maybe
that
we
we're
can
successful? Is it
continue to
maybe
get better
looking
at
or strive
how
towards?
positive
And
I
so
am when
as we
on the
continue
course?
that
Is it
process
looking at
of
effort level? Is it
setting
looking
goals,
at
being able to make
improvement?
progress,
We can
we're
have
able
so
to
many
learn
different
and
things that
evaluate, and then
contribute
that
to
shifts
success.
us
If
into
we
that
define
new
success
cycle of
on
being
just
able to
one
continually
thing,
having that forward momentum.
it makes it a lot more
And so lots of
black
different
and
things
white,
that are
and that
coming
can
up here.
sometimes lead to
Lots of different
putting
ways
more
that it can
pressure on
benefit our
ourselves.
performance. And I think it's
Feeling
really
like
helpful
we've got
just
lots of
to
expectations,
remind ourselves
feeling
about
like we've
that
got
as
more
a
stress,
way
and
to
maybe
think,
not
okay,
enjoying
we
it
know
as
that
much
goal setting is important, but these are
because
some
we're
specific
only focused on
examples.
one thing. If we can start to broaden it out, it
When we
helps us to be
start
able to
thinking about
focus
goal
sometimes on the
setting,
process a bit more.
again,
And
we
it helps
often
us to
think
be
about
able
what
to
that
have different
result is,
pieces
what
that
it
are
is
building
that
us up
we
along
want
the
to
way.
accomplish. It can be very
So
specific.
just to
We can
add to
start
some
to
of
really
those
detail that for
pieces of
ourselves.
success that you put in the
But I think
chat,
it's also important
we
before we
could
actually
look
dive
at
into that
obviously
goals and
achieving
making them really
of a desired
specific,
outcome. So
is
having
to
that
think
outcome goal that we're
generally,
wanting to work
what does
towards,
success look like
recognizing
for me?
that
What
yeah,
are
we
some of
really
those
want to
things
celebrate
that
and congratulate
I've done
ourselves
in the past
when
that
we
have helped
get
me to
that
be
big outcome, when we
successful?
have that
What
big
are some
goal
of
and
my
that big
key supports
success.
and resources?
But it can also be
How do
looking
I
at
know
the
that I'm
hard
being
work that we're
successful?
putting
How
in.
am I wanting to
And so
define
maybe
that
you've been
for
really
myself?
training hard through
And
the
again, if
winter.
we can
Maybe you're
start
looking at some of the work that you're
identifying
wanting
that
to
for
do as you
ourselves,
move into
especially
spring
as
and
we're
summer.
at maybe the
There can
start of the
be
season,
a lot
or
of acknowledging
we're
of the
setting
hard
some new
work that
goals,
can
it
build into
helps us to
success.
be able to then expand that
Ideas
vision for
of
ourselves, where
continuously improvement. So this
we
idea
can
of
have
consistent
different
play, this
metrics that we're
positive
measuring
progress,
our
I think
progress
some
by,
of
that we're
those kind of
measuring
feed
those
into
outcomes
that.
by.
But knowing that
And
we
so
are
this is where
getting
I'm going to
better
turn it over to
because we're
you.
putting in the time, we're putting in the
Please just
effort,
feel
that
free
can
to
be
pop it in the
really
chat.
reinforcing
You
as
can put it
well.
to everyone. You can
Knowing
put
that
it
we're
directly
doing our
to me.
best no
You want,
matter
you can put
what.
it
And
directly to
so
Anna too.
our best
But
on
we'll
a
just
day
read
when
out
it's
what are
sunny
some
and
of these
calm might look
things
very
that
different than our
maybe
best on a day when it's
define
like
success to
windy
you,
and,
some of
and
the things
pretty
that
poor conditions.
mean,
And
like
so
that
looking at
you're
what does that
doing
best mean for you,
success to be.
looking at
So
how
we're
that's
gonna
maybe
think about
applying
it
given
and
the
then put it in the
situation
chat
of what the
and
environment's like, what the day is like, what's going on in your life. Perfect. So yeah, a definition of success can definitely be achieving specific goals where you set those things out for yourself, you put in that work to work towards it, and then you have that outcome. So that can definitely be part of the success process. What else might success be for us? Characteristics as a way to help you feel like you're really making that progress. So again, there can be lots of different things and lots of different skills that can help. I know we spent some time last week talking about it, but again, recognizing things like resilience can make a big difference in terms of contributing towards the goals that we want to accomplish. We've talked about work ethic quite a bit already, but determination, being a good problem solver, openness to feedback, willingness to try new things, that adaptability, those can all be different things that really help to support our ideas of success, that help to reinforce who we are, that help to reinforce the things that we're doing well. And so again, I think it's really important that we start thinking about all those different pieces, especially as we start to set some goals. So with that, moving into goal setting principles, again, some of these might be really familiar if you've gone through goal setting presentations in the past. I'm guessing you know these. If you haven't, again, I think it's just really helpful to review them because it gives us a good sense of how we're setting goals, how that's going to help us. SMART goals, you can see I've got the 5 words that associate with it. I've seen different people present sometimes different words on this. I don't really think there's a right or wrong. This is the way I like to do it. If you've seen it a different way, again, you're more than welcome to use your SMART goals the way that's been defined for you. But these are the words I like to use. So when we're setting goals, we really want to make sure that we're making them specific. So we want to make sure that we know exactly what that goal means, and that if we share it with someone else, they're going to know exactly what that means. So if we say, well, I want to be a better golfer. Okay, great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not specific. We don't know what that means to you. Maybe you're looking at really working on specific specific skills. Maybe you're looking at, I want to be a better putter. Maybe you're looking at some of those numbers that are associated with your golf game. If you can really start to specify those different aspects of what that goal is and how you're going to work towards it, that makes it so that you're able to think about it with those details, and then you're able to take steps more clearly to achieve it. When we set goals, we want to make sure that they're measurable. So how do I know I'm getting better? Again, we talk about making this consistent progress. We talk about being able to take those steps towards our goal. How do we know that we're any different from when we started? We want to be able to track that. And so making sure that you've got a way that you're measuring it, whether it's through scores, whether it's through different things that you're doing on the course, whether it's through some other metric. But again, having those measurable outcomes can help you to be able to then know that you're making progress, and that can be really motivating, reinforcing. It can help you build confidence. Sometimes the A is where I see changes in terms of SMART goals. We want to think about our goals as being adjustable. So just because we're sitting through a goal session tonight, just because you're writing goals down right now, doesn't mean that you have to stick to them forever. If you find that you're making progress a lot more quickly, obviously you can adjust that and make it more challengeable. If you find that something comes up and throws things out of whack, or a big challenge that you weren't expecting, you need to adjust it the other way and make it maybe slightly easier or tweak it a bit. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just about making these goals fit for you. Because we're wanting to adjust them, I think that ties in really well with the realistic. We want to make our goals realistic for ourselves. So we want to make sure it's well suited for where we're at in terms of our development, in terms of what we're wanting to accomplish in terms of our progress. And with that, we really want to make sure that the goals are challenging, but we don't want to make them overly challenging or too easy. If we set goals that are too challenging, we find that we're just not making progress. We're getting discouraged. We're more likely to give up because we're just trying to reach for this big thing and we're not getting there. Setting challenging goals is something that helps to really, we know we need to put in the time, we know we need to put in the effort, we know we need to put in that energy, but we also know that if we work hard, it is realistic for us to achieve it. If we set those goals that are too easy, again, we know that, you know what, I can go out and do that. It's not going to be a problem. And so again, there's nothing wrong with that. It can start to build up confidence. But if we're doing that on a regular basis, we're not actually challenging ourselves to see how much progress we can make. We're not pushing ourselves. We're not needing to put in that effort. And so it can lead to complacency. It can lead to just kind of being stuck with the status quo and accepting that is okay. And if that's what you want, again, that's okay. But if you're wanting to really make those steps and become better in whatever realm, you need them to be challenging, because then it's something that you need to work at and make that progress to get better. Again, we want to set our goals in a time frame. So we want them to be time oriented, where we have kind of an end date or an end time frame in terms of when is this going to be achieved by. So as an example, we've got Canada Summer Games coming up this summer. If there are athletes that are wanting to make that team, you know kind of what the timeline is for needing to make that team. If you're looking at maybe the course of a season, you have a general idea of maybe when you're going to be golfing until. So again, having that time frame can help with planning. It can help you to be able to know, okay, I need to be at this point here. You're able to build out that process and make that plan for yourself. A lot of times when we look at goals, especially when we're using this SMART goal setting process, we're looking at that outcome. We're looking at that end result of what is it that I want to accomplish. And again, having that big goal, having that long-term goal, those can be really important because it gives us these things to strive towards. And so I think it's important that we set those kinds of goals, but then we also want to break it down in terms of how am I getting to that goal? How am I actually making progress towards that? And that's where we start setting process goals. So again, coming back to the idea of, I want to make the Canada Games team, that's maybe your outcome. What is your process of getting there? What do you need to do to get better? How many balls do you need to hit? How many rounds do you need to play? What are specific aspects of your game that you need to work on? And with that process, you can even break it down into, what am I doing this week? What am I doing this month? And what am I doing today? And so again, if you can start getting really specific with that, it's a way of being able to hold yourself accountable, keep yourself in the process, but also know that you're making that trajectory towards the outcome that you're wanting to achieve. And so again, I think it's helpful to go over those. Those are some really important goal setting principles. I talked about effort earlier as well. Being able to think about, what does my effort look like with this SMART goal, with this outcome goal, with these process goals. And again, being able to think about how hard you're going to have to work, the time you're going to have to put in. That can help to round out this process too, and just really know that you're committing to the work that's needed. When we set goals, there's tons of different ways to set goals. We can look at long-term goals, short-term goals. Again, there's no right or wrong in terms of how you want to start setting up the goals. The way I'm going to encourage you to set goals tonight is in these different areas. I think that sometimes when we start setting goals, we get so sucked into one specific aspect. So whether it's like, this is what I want to shoot for my golf game. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but we get so focused on that one piece that sometimes we overlook all these other things that we can be doing to get better. And so by breaking it down into these 4 different areas, it helps to think about ourselves as a whole athlete. It helps us be able to incorporate different skills that will still help to support that movement forward. So when we look at physical goals, this is really kind of your general athletic skill. So skills that most athletes are going to need. So it could be something like strength, endurance, flexibility, like just kind of those general sport skills. What kinds of physical skills do you want to be getting better at as a way to support your golf game? What does that look like for you? Your sports skills, that's going to be your golf skills, your golf game. And so again, you can think about what kinds of goals you want to set there, whether it's a component of your game, whether it's the end result in terms of how a round is going for you. But being able to set your skills that way and set your goals that way really helps you be able to target those specific things. Again, obviously, I'm a mental performance consultant, a psychologist. I think the mental goals are really important. But when we can focus on this, when we can make it a priority, that's where you really start to see that progress and that improvement. And so thinking about what are some of the mental goals that I have for this season, for this month, for whatever time frame it is that you're thinking about. But maybe you want to really incorporate visualization. Maybe you're looking at some of your thinking patterns. We're talking about that in one of our upcoming sessions. What are some of those mental goals that you really want to be working on? Again, recognizing that if you're mentally there, that's going to supplement those golf skills on the course, and it's going to help to increase your performance. And then the last one, your daily life. Again, we don't exist in silos. It's not like we've just got pieces of our life that never interact. If we can think about how can I maybe set goals for my daily life that will support my golf life for me as an athlete, again, it provides that sense of rounding things out, being able to take that holistic perspective. Maybe you've got a goal of getting more sleep. Maybe that's something that is going to help you day to day, but also probably going to help you as an athlete. Maybe you really want to focus on nutrition, on some of those eating habits. Maybe there's something like hydration. Maybe it's managing stress or communicating. There can be so many different things day to day that if you're working on those things, it's going to help you as a person, but they also really transfer into your golf game. And so again, this is the way that I'll really encourage you to set some of those goals tonight, is in these 4 different areas. And so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share in the chat a link to the document that we're going to be working off of tonight. You're welcome to open it up and download it. What I'm also going to do here is just stop this share. I'll switch my share so you can see what it looks like too. And we're going to take a bit of time to set some goals. And so this is where you get to think about what's going to be best for you. 1 second here. I'm going to start at the top. So essentially, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to encourage you to set at least one goal in each of those 4 different areas. If you have more than one goal, that's great. Probably for time purposes tonight, you're going to have time for about one goal in each area. The second piece that is really important to think about is, what is it that I want to accomplish? So that's going to be the specific goal. Why do I want to accomplish this? Why is this important to me? Why is this going to be something that motivates me? And then the details. How am I going to do this? How am I going to take those steps forward? What's that process going to look like? What's my day-to-day going to look like in terms of working towards this? And so again, it starts to get you thinking about not only the goal, but also how you're supporting yourself in terms of accomplishing those goals. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes with this. If you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them, whether it's through chat or through unmuting yourself. But for the time being, this is what you're going to work towards. Okay, so again, recognizing I gave you 5 minutes to do a lot of stuff. This is just, like I said, the chance to start getting some of those ideas down. So whether it's typing it out for yourself, writing it out, just having those initial kind of notes down. Maybe you picked one of those areas and really started to detail out in terms of your why and your how. maybe you tried to get those general what's in terms of the goals for each of those areas. You need to come back to fill in some of the details afterwards. Again, this process can take time, recognizing that within 5 minutes, there's only so much you can do. And so I really encourage you to continue working on this, whether it's through the presentation with some of the other things that we're working on, or coming back to it afterwards. Again, if you can put the time into detailing this goals, you're really going to start to understand why it's important to you, what that looks like. And that's going to set you up for that success in terms of having this clear foundation, this clear starting point. And so really being able to start feeding into that. I didn't prompt you to work on this next question, but just recognizing that it is there. How can I tell that I'm making progress? And I think that's a really important question too. We talked about it earlier in terms of those ideas of what that looks like for you in terms of your success. But if you can look at how am I going to tell that I'm working towards these goals? How can I tell that this is something that I'm getting better at? Again, that can be really reassuring. It can be a good check-in. It can also help to build up some of that confidence and that sense of motivation. So again, this can be your starting point, but I, again, encourage you to continue to come back to it. So with those goals, again, really being able to start clarifying for yourself, what is it that I want to accomplish? Be clear on exactly what it is that you're going to do. Use those SMART goal setting principles, use those outcomes, use those processes. Again, once we start to clarify that what, that gives us a good starting point. The why, that's where knowing why we want to do something, knowing the reason behind it, that really starts to build our motivation. It really helps to enhance that focus, helps us to be able to dial into it. This why is something we can always come back to in terms of those low points when you're trying to work through something, when you feel like you need reminders, when you're struggling. Coming back to why you started this can help you to work forward to it. And then the how, again, be really clear on how you want to accomplish this. Make it specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, time-oriented. Think about what that day-to-day is going to look like. Think about how you're going to progress with this. So lots of different pieces there. Just noticing in the chat, one of the downloads had just words, not boxes. Yeah, sorry if that's the way it showed up. I'm not exactly sure why that was. I can try resending the template again after the call if that's helpful. Yeah, I'm not sure why that would have shown up that way, so apologies. With this though, just coming back to the goal setting, this is where I'm going to ask Anna to jump in and just share some of her experience with goals and how this has worked for her, just so we can really start to learn and feed off of some specific examples.
Hello, everyone. Hope you've all enjoyed Lisa's talk so far. She has brought up some amazing points. And I'd like to point out about her points that everything she's brought up so far are things that I've used in my professional golf career. Now, a lot of this stuff might seem basic, it might seem new, it might seem more complicated, but it doesn't really matter as long as you can build the self-awareness, kind of what we had talked about in our last chat last week. So you can't really set goals without a baseline, which is kind of why we decided to do the self-awareness talk first and then started talking about goals. Now, if you haven't really been super self-aware about, any of the categories Lisa listed, physical, sport, mental, or life, you can always set small goals and then adjust them from there. Because like she said, if we start out with big goals or really easy goals, then we're a lot less likely to work towards them, or we're going to get discouraged. So even if you haven't really built too much self-awareness and you just decided today, you know what, I'm going to stay hydrated and I'm going to drink so much water for the next couple of weeks, even though, maybe you really struggle with drinking enough water. Starting out with just being aware of how much water you're drinking and being like, okay, I'm going to drink 1 water bottle a day. And if it seems too easy, then you can just adjust them from there. So no matter what, you can always build these small goals and work your way up if you aren't sure kind of where your medium to best goal would be. And I love the picture that she started out with. It's so funny that she had that up there. When I looked at the slides earlier before the chat here, that's actually my theory, or not my theory, one of my mantras that I really, really focused on my last couple of years playing as a professional. Success isn't linear. improvement isn't linear. As much as you want to get better and better and better, you really have to just acknowledge that there are going to be some dips. And honestly, that sucks. Sometimes it's harder than others, but if you can accept that there's always going to be an up and down version before you get to where you want to go, then accepting that and making your way towards these goals is going to be a lot easier. Because as soon as you have a down little dip, it's easy to get discouraged, but there's no reason to, because that is just how it goes. So I love that she brought up all of the categories, because balance is a huge factor, whether you're a competitive athlete or someone who's just playing golf for fun. Even as a professional athlete, I had most of my goals in the physical, sport, and mental. But over the years, as I played professionally, I found out that I didn't have a lot of balance. And so then I started to have more goals in my specific life outside of golf. And I actually started playing better golf. So I think one thing to take away from is, no matter what you do with your goals, it's always good to have at least one in every category. Even if one of them is small, it's still a goal. Okay. Because if you're at least choosing one goal in a category that you're not as like invested in, you're still building awareness, because you are aware of how you're progressing towards that small goal. Again, using self-awareness to build these is very important. And the more you do it, the more you'll realize kind of where you're sitting at and where you want to be and what's realistic. As an example, so I always love using this example, because everyone looks at statistics, whether people are looking at the PGA Tour or the LPGA Tour, or, you know, your junior stats or your own stats on the golf course. One of the ones that I used to always want to be better at was my up and down percentage. So I'd always want to get one putt after my chip. And I was analyzing my stats on the stats website that I used. And I was just really struggling. I was working on my chipping. I was working on my putting so hard. I had specific goals for chipping and specific goals for putting, but my up and down percentage was not getting better. So my coach and I looked at my stats of everything else, but I also decided to analyze where where I was chipping from every single time I had an up and down opportunity. Now, this was so interesting, because it showed me that every time I missed the green, I was in a very difficult spot, which means maybe my up and down percentage shouldn't have been my main goal. My main goal should have been course management, or to miss in an easier spot, because it's no fun missing to the right of the green when the pin is also on the right, and you have about, 5 feet to land it before it rolls, down the tier and away from the green, or, on the other side of the green. So being able to build a full picture around these numerical goals that you may set is very important. And building the small goals around the main goals, like my main goal was having, 70% up and down ratios. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't also acknowledge that my course management and misses by the green needed to be in better places. So my main goal would have been improve my up and down percentage. My supporting goal would be choose better targets and know if I'm missing right that day, I'm probably going to aim a little bit more left, or I'm going to favor targets more to the left side, so that I know no matter what, if I miss right, my right shot is still going to be okay. I love that one. It's so simple, but it really makes a huge difference when making goals and being aware of how you're actually improving. Because I didn't think I was improving, when really my putting and chipping was amazing, because I practiced it so much, but it didn't matter, because this other small supporting goal needed attention. So another way to incorporate goals into your practice or into your life is also to make them into into your drills or games. So as much as I have big goals, for my life and for my golf game, I also have, small goals just for like one practice session. So if I have a drill, I'm going to sink, I have 4 tees around a hole. They're going to start at 4 feet. I'm going to try and sink one from each tee in a row. I'm going to start at 4 feet, and then I'm going to try and sink them all in a row at 5 feet, and then all in a row at 6 feet. And so whatever I end up getting to is my goal for next practice. So another fun way to keep practice entertaining is to have these small goals built in to your practice, or have certain games that you go back to try and beat your score. Because sometimes practice can be mundane. So even building in numerical values that you want to incorporate in practice can actually build your confidence into actually succeeding on the golf course when you have this 6-footer and you're like, oh man, like right to left breaker. Okay. You know what? Oh, I just did this putt, 4 times in a row when I did this drill 4 times because I kept missing, that 7-footer. I did so many 6-footers. I now have the confidence to hit this one in the hole. So not only does it build your putting skills, but it also builds or whatever skill you're building, it also builds the confidence to actually execute it on the course. Because the main part with sport and mental goals is bringing it from practice into a usable circumstance, like the 18th hole and you're in contention, or, you're on the 16th hole and you're playing a match against your buddy and you have to win this hole to win, the $5, the lunch, when the pressure's on, that's when you're going to know how you're doing, if it's really, really working. But if you don't make that putt or you don't succeed in that challenging situation, you can always come back to, what went wrong there? You can be self-aware, analyze the whole situation, and then you can adjust or keep your goals the same depending on your circumstances. Now, I don't think analyzing your goals every single day is healthy. That would get you too into the numbers, in my opinion. But again, my opinion. Depending on the goal and how big it is, if it's a practice goal or, a monthly goal. If it's a practice goal, maybe reevaluate one every once or 2 weeks. Bigger goals, I would evaluate every 3 to 4 weeks. So yeah, goals are fun though. And the SMART goals, oh my gosh, I love those. They're the best way to make numerical goals to actually measure. So when you are deciding on what goals to choose from, always look at that. And even if all of your goals aren't necessarily totally measurable, the more measurable you can get, the more confidence you're going to build when you do see the improvement. Yeah, I think that's about it. I could talk about this forever, so I'm just going to cut myself off there.
No, thanks, Anna. That's great. And I think you gave some really good specific examples and talked about some of the things that you did in terms of your goals. And I think that makes a big difference just to see how it can play out. And obviously, what works for one person doesn't have to work for every person. And so that's, again, where we start building in some of that self-awareness in terms of what's worked for me in the past, what are some of the things that I want to be consistent with in terms of applying to move me forward. And then also knowing that sometimes we need to make changes to have change. And so thinking, where am I willing to try new things? Where am I willing to put myself out there as a way to try to get better as well? So I think this is great.
Yes, being flexible with your goals is very important. I was always one of those people who I set a goal and I would not change it. I would always make the goals way too hard, and it was really discouraging. So if you are struggling with a goal, don't feel like you have to stick with it. Flexibility and adaptability are great qualities to have. Know yourself and be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think a lot of people, when they start setting their goals, they stop here. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We've gone through quite the process in terms of looking at those 4 different areas. We've looked at your what, your how, your why. Again, that can set you up really well. But I don't want to just leave it here. I think there's a couple other things that if you're able to think about, if you're able to plan for, again, it just builds that foundation even more. It gives you a lot more things to fall back on, and it helps you to be able to navigate those challenges more effectively. And so the first thing in terms of being able to have that follow-up is how we're actually going to track that progress and how we're actually going to hold ourselves accountable. And so there's lots of different ideas here. Again, there's no right or wrong, but it's being able to look at what works best for you. So one example, keep a training journal. I think this is always such a great opportunity. I think it's something that I always encourage athletes to be doing. If you can look at having even just a sense of what you did each day on the golf course, off the golf course, having that record, it's something that you're able to have that reflection in the moment of that day but it's also so valuable because you can come back to it and be looking at, what did I do? How have I gotten better? What are some of the progress that I've made? What are some of the things that I did that maybe worked? What are some of the things that I tried that, you know what, I'm not so sure about? Again, that training journal is essentially a record of what you've done, and it can make a big difference. So I always encourage that. I love the paper and pen style. I know not everyone does. There are so many different apps that you can get now too, if you want to track things that way, keeping it in your phone, on your laptop, on your tablet, whatever it is. Do what's going to work for you there. Having an accountability buddy, anytime we can have that social commitment and that social support, it really starts to build up our own accountability. And so whether it's just kind of sharing your goal with someone, whether it's a teammate, a coach, a partner, a friend, whoever it is, then they start to be invested in it as well. They can help to be able to support you in different ways. I think it can also be really helpful to have someone that's going through something similar. You don't have to have the exact same goals. That's not necessarily what I mean here, but someone that's also working really hard towards something, that knows what it's like to go through those ups and downs. Again, you're able to kind of support each other through that. You're able to help hold each other accountable, help challenge each other, help support each other. That can make a big difference. I know sometimes people like to get creative with it. And so they start to think, okay, how can I turn this goal into something that I can track as a 30-day challenge? And so thinking about where you want to be at the end of 30 days and thinking about what you're doing each 30 days as a way to progress to that. Maybe it's thinking, okay, you know what, for the next 30 days, I'm going to go to bed by a certain time, or I'm going to challenge myself to eat more vegetables or change some part of my game. Like, you can set that timeline as a way to start building that habit. Sometimes it makes it feel like it's more realistic or achievable that way, but you're also really building that positive habit and seeing that progression. It sometimes seems counterintuitive when we're wanting to reach our own goals that we're supporting other people, but being able to provide that support to other people through encouragement, through feedback, through just being there for someone that they can lean on, it actually releases a lot of really healthy hormones and neurotransmitters in our system that helps us to feel better because we're helping someone else. And then those positive feelings, those positive thoughts, those positive emotions actually then can be transferred into our own progress too. And so by supporting other people, it actually ends up being a positive return for yourself. And so I know sometimes it can feel solitary, but if you're able to build that team around you and able to provide that support to other people, you can have a lot of gains there. Talked a little bit about using your supports, using your resources. Again, know what people are there for you, and you're probably using them in different ways. You're probably going to ask different questions of a coach than you would interact with a teammate, than you would lean on your parent or a family member. And so being able to know not only who's there supporting you, but how they're supporting you. Maybe your parents packing up a meal that you're eating on the road. Your coach is giving you specific feedback. Again, knowing the roles that those people play and how they can help you move forward, I think is helpful. And then looking at what other additional resources are available. Looking at those resources that you have day to day, or resources that you can seek out as a way to really feel like you're getting better. And then being able to celebrate your successes. So celebrating those short-term successes, being able to see the improvements that you've made. I think that's really crucial. Being able to think about how you're using your strengths here to be able to move yourself forward. We talked about that in our last session. Those are really key things too. And so this is where we're going to just do a couple minute quick reflection. I'm just going to switch the share again. And as was kind of mentioned in the chat, I think I'm seeing some kind of changes in terms of how mine is, should look like this with that over. But just thinking quickly, what supports do you have? Who are those key supports, those people that you lean on? How are they supporting you? And what resources do you have? What are some of those other factors that really help to make a big difference for you? So I'm just going to give you, let's say, a minute or two here, but just to jot that down for yourself to get yourself thinking about it. Okay, so again, it wasn't a ton of time, but being able to reflect on those supports and resources, I think, gives us a sense of the things that are available to us. And again, anytime we can use those to help maintain accountability, to help set us up for success, it makes a big difference. The last thing that we're going to chat through is being able to anticipate and plan for those challenges. And like we saw in that opening graphic, there are always going to be those ups and downs in sport, but in day-to-day life. And so we want to start thinking about what kinds of challenges, what could come up that could potentially throw me off or prevent me from reaching my goal. And so we're not trying to catastrophize. We're not trying to think about all these worst case scenarios and just leave it there and make ourselves stressed for no reason. What we want to do is then actually plan and think, okay, if this happens, this is how I would respond. This is what I would do. These are the people that I would reach out to. These are the resources I would use. This is how I would respond mentally, physically, psychologically. And so by starting to plan for this, you're able to essentially have kind of that thought out resource, that thought out action plan. And it makes it easier in the moment to be able to respond more quickly. And if we can be able to respond to those challenges in a way that's helpful for us, in a way that fits for us, but in a way that gets us back on track more quickly, again, it doesn't take those challenges away, but it helps to level out some of those ups and downs. And so sometimes it's thinking back to what is past challenges that I've experienced, what are things I've had to deal with in the past. Maybe you dealt with them really well and you want to replicate that. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I could deal with that way better. And thinking, okay, how would I deal with it differently? Maybe there's something anticipating, maybe something that's coming up, you know, that maybe you're in, say, grade 11 or 12 and your final period, like final exam period is getting more stressful and you want to plan for that. Maybe there's something that's coming up outside of sport that you know you're going to need to manage. Maybe you hate getting up early and you need to manage that. So creating a plan for either how you're going to get up early and manage that challenge or how you're going to shift things around. Again, it's up to you to think about what kinds of challenges are going to be relevant for you, but it's starting to come up with an idea of how you would actually deal with that. So shifting back to that handout one last time, what barriers or challenges could I face and how am I going to manage that? So again, just going to give you a couple minutes here. It's just jotting down some of those initial ideas, but again, being able to start supporting yourself, start putting some of that thought into it, just to be able to kind of round out this goal setting plan for yourself. So again, a minute or two here. So again, this activity isn't meant to increase stress. If we just were looking at the barriers or the challenges or the obstacles, that's sometimes where we get a little bit stuck, where we get nervous and stressed and worried, and we just kind of get stuck there. By actually starting to think about what am I going to do? How am I going to manage this? What resources and supports do I have available? Again, you're moving into that planning phase and that helps it to feel a lot more productive. So again, I think that can be a really effective thing to be considering as you're rounding out this goal setting process. And so with that, we're moving into our summary for the evening, recognizing that we've covered a lot of different things in terms of goal setting, just hitting on some of these key points in terms of the highlight, really recognizing that if we can start to understand what success means to ourselves, we can even maybe start to push ourselves to expand that idea of success so that it encompasses more aspects for ourselves, then we can really start moving forward more deliberately. We can look at, this is what success means. This is how I'm going to set myself up to be able to move towards that. Really pushing ourselves to be able to set a variety of goals. So setting those goals in those 4 different areas, again, the physical, the sport skills, the mental, the daily life, it helps us to be able to think about ourselves, our game, our who we are as people, who we are as athletes in different ways. Again, that can increase that self-awareness, but it also really helps to round out what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so again, coming back to those key questions, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? You start to really then build those goals in a clear and concise way. We didn't talk as much about this. We kind of hinted at it in terms of the self-awareness, but really being able to use your strengths as a way to support your goal setting process. And so looking back, if you were here for last week's session, what are some of those top 5 strengths that you have, those top 5 characteristics? How can you use those strengths to support this goal setting process? So if you feel like you're really resilient, you're a really good communicator, you're really good at asking for feedback, how are you going to use those to support your goal setting process and actually being able to move forward? I think there's a lot of ways that you can really pull on those strengths to be able to apply it here. And again, as we talked about at the end, track your progress, look at ways that you're going to hold yourself accountable, use your supports and resources, use that as a way to make sure that you're getting what you need, and then also being able to plan and anticipate for those challenges. All different ways that we can expand this goal setting process so that we're feeling that we're more prepared and better set up. So again, that's what I had for our session tonight. I've got my email address here, Anna, if you want to put yours into the chat. We're always happy to take questions, whether it's on the call right now or if you want to follow up with us by email. So happy to have questions if there are any at this point. Please feel free to unmute yourself or to put it into the chat if you'd like. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, I'll just wrap up by saying thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to be able to chat through this, to have you join. We do have another session next week, which I believe is on thinking patterns. I know we've got 2 left, thinking patterns in stress management, stress and coping. I believe it's thinking patterns next week and stress and coping the following week. But double check the schedule that golf has posted. With that, we will wrap up the session for the evening. So thank you, everyone.